In a small, forgotten village on the outskirts of the city, a young girl named Lina lived a life filled with hardship and silent endurance. She was gentle, kind, and hard-working, but fate had dealt her a cruel hand from the very start. Her mother had passed away when she was only a child, and her father, once a loving man, fell into deep despair, eventually remarrying a woman who hid her greed behind fake smiles. At first, Lina believed her new stepmother would bring warmth and stability back into their home. But that illusion shattered quickly. The woman saw Lina not as a daughter, but as a burden, someone to be exploited for her own gain. The stepmother forced Lina to do endless chores, denied her proper food, and constantly reminded her that she was worthless. The only comfort Lina had was a faded pendant her real mother left her and a small birthmark on her shoulder that resembled a star. Her mother used to say it was a sign of destiny, but Lina never understood what that meant. As years passed, her father fell ill, and after his death, the stepmother's cruelty grew unbearable. One fateful night, when bills piled up and greed consumed the woman entirely, she made a horrifying decision: she sold Lina to a wealthy family in the city under the guise of employment. Lina was only 17. Confused and heartbroken, she begged her stepmother to let her stay, but her pleas were met with a cold stare and a single suitcase shoved into her hands. The next morning, Lina was taken away by a man in a black car, her eyes brimming with tears as she watched her home fade in the distance. She didn't know where she was going or what awaited her, only that she had been traded like an object by the very person who was supposed to protect her. Arriving at a towering mansion, she was introduced as the new maid. Despite her fear, she bowed her head and accepted her role quietly. She promised herself she wouldn't cry anymore, she would survive, no matter how cruel life became. Deep down, she believed that her mother's words about the mark of destiny had to mean something. Little did she know, that same birthmark would soon unravel the secret of her true identity, and lead her straight back to the father she had lost long ago. In the heart of the bustling city stood a towering glass building, the headquarters of Adrian Knight Enterprises, led by its mysterious and powerful CEO, Adrian Knight. To the world, Adrian was the perfect example of success, wealthy, disciplined, and impossibly composed. Yet behind the polished suits and cold demeanor hid a man shattered by tragedy. Years ago, Adrian had been a devoted husband and a joyful father to a baby girl he adored more than life itself. His world revolved around her laughter, her tiny hands, and her innocent smile. But one night, everything changed. When his daughter was only 2 years old, she was kidnapped during a family outing. Despite desperate searches, police investigations, and public pleas, she was never found. The case went cold, and with it, so did Adrian's heart. His wife couldn't bear the grief and eventually passed away from illness, leaving him completely alone. From that moment on, Adrian buried his emotions beneath layers of work and power. He built an empire, not out of ambition, but out of pain. His days became a routine of meetings, numbers, and silent nights spent staring at the last photograph of his little girl. He convinced himself that love only led to loss. So, he built a wall around his heart, a fortress that no one could break. Employees feared him, business partners respected him, but no one truly knew him. His coldness became legendary, and rumors spread that Adrian Knight had no feelings at all. But deep down, a part of him still yearned for closure, for the impossible miracle that his daughter might still be alive somewhere. He never spoke of it, but he made anonymous donations to children's homes and orphanages, as if trying to protect other little girls from the fate his daughter suffered. Years later, when his head maid recommended hiring a new servant for his mansion, Adrian didn't even look at the girl's file. "As long as she's competent, it doesn't matter," he said emotionlessly. He had no idea that the young maid walking through his grand marble halls would carry the same blood as him, or that fate was about to return what he had lost. Little did he know, the quiet, polite girl he barely noticed at first would slowly awaken the heart he thought was long dead, and the truth behind her identity would change both of their lives forever. When Lina began working in the Grand Knight mansion, she was overwhelmed by its size and silence. The marble floors gleamed like mirrors, and every sound echoed through the halls. The other maids warned her, "Do your job well, never look the CEO in the eyes, and don't ask questions." She nodded obediently. She had no idea that the man behind those intimidating walls, Adrian Knight, was her own father. Their first encounter was brief but unforgettable. Lina had accidentally bumped into him while carrying a tray of tea. The fine china shattered across the floor, and the sound seemed to freeze time. Adrian's icy gaze fell on her, sharp and unyielding. "Be careful next time," he said in a tone that made her knees tremble. But then, for the faintest second, something in his eyes softened, a flicker of confusion, almost recognition. From that day on, Adrian found himself inexplicably drawn to the quiet young maid. She was unlike anyone else in his mansion. Despite her hardships, she carried a gentle grace, never complaining, always smiling faintly as she went about her work. Her kindness extended even to the servants who mistreated her out of jealousy. She reminded him of someone from a lifetime ago. He began to notice small, peculiar things, the way she tilted her head when she thought, the way her laughter sounded eerily familiar, and the strange birthmark on her shoulder that he once thought he'd never see again. He brushed it off at first, thinking it was a coincidence. Yet, the feeling of connection only grew stronger with time. Lina, too, sensed something different about the CEO. Beneath his stern exterior, she caught glimpses of sadness, a loneliness she understood all too well. She didn't know why, but she wanted to ease his pain, even if he never noticed her. One evening, she left a cup of warm tea outside his office with a note that said, "Even the coldest nights deserve warmth." He didn't know who had written it, but it made him pause for the first time in years. Slowly, the walls between them began to crumble. Adrian started assigning her lighter duties, occasionally asking about her past, and listening quietly when she spoke. He couldn't explain why he felt so protective of her, only that something in his soul recognized her long before his mind did. What neither of them knew was that destiny was already working, guiding father and daughter back toward the truth, through memories, kindness, and a connection that neither time nor tragedy could destroy. It happened on a rainy evening, one that would forever change both of their lives. The mansion was unusually quiet, the sound of thunder rolling across the sky as Lina hurried through the hallways with a tray of tea. In her rush, she slipped on the wet floor, the porcelain cups crashing beside her. The noise startled Adrian Knight, who emerged from his study instantly. Without hesitation, he knelt beside her, concern flashing across his usually stoic face. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. Lina tried to assure him she was fine, but when she moved, she winced, a small cut glistening on her shoulder where the fabric had torn. Adrian reached for a cloth to stop the bleeding, and that's when he saw it. There, just below her collarbone, was a small star-shaped birthmark, identical to the one his lost daughter had. For a moment, he froze. His heart stopped beating as his mind flooded with memories of the tiny hand that once clutched his finger, the sweet laughter that had filled his home, and the little girl who had vanished without a trace. He felt dizzy. This can't be," he whispered under his breath. Lina looked at him, confused by his trembling hands and pale expression. He quickly composed himself, telling her to rest and leave the cleaning to others. But once she was gone, he collapsed into his chair, consumed by disbelief and hope. That night, Adrian couldn't sleep. He went through old photographs, comparing the faint birthmark in them to what he had just seen. It was identical, the same shape, the same placement. Memories of that dreadful night years ago replayed endlessly in his mind. What if the reports were wrong? What if his daughter hadn't died, but had been taken and sold? The next morning, Adrian secretly ordered a DNA test, collecting a few strands of her hair from the mansion's laundry room. Each day he waited for the results felt like an eternity. He found himself watching her from afar, the way she smiled, the way she comforted others, the way her eyes seemed to carry both pain and strength. Everything about her screamed familiarity. Finally, the results arrived. With trembling hands, he tore open the envelope, and when his eyes met the words, 99.9% match, biological relation confirmed, father and daughter, tears streamed down his face for the first time in years. Adrian clutched the paper to his chest, whispering her name, Lina, the name he had once given to the daughter he thought he had lost forever. Fate had brought her back to him, not as a stranger, but as the humble maid who had unknowingly healed his heart. The moment the truth was revealed, the Knight mansion felt different, charged with emotions long buried and truths finally coming to light. Adrian Knight, once a man of ice and steel, now could not contain the flood of feelings that had been locked away for years. He found Lina in the garden, humming softly as she watered the flowers, completely unaware that the very man who had appeared cold and distant was her biological father. "Lina," he whispered, his voice trembling. She turned, surprised to see him standing there with tears in his eyes, a side of him she had never witnessed before. The realization slowly dawned on her, the care he had shown her, the inexplicable warmth behind his strictness, and the sudden intensity in his gaze, it was all because he was her father. Without hesitation, she ran into his arms, and for the first time, the mansion echoed with the pure, unrestrained laughter and sobs of a father and daughter reunited. Adrian held her tightly, repeating apologies for the years lost, for the pain neither of them had deserved. Lina, in turn, shared the struggles she had endured at the hands of her stepmother and the harsh life that had led her to this moment. Every word, every tear, solidified the bond that had been ripped apart years ago. But fate demanded justice alongside reunion. Adrian, now fully aware of the stepmother's betrayal, confronted her. The cruel woman's greed and deception were exposed to the world. She had sold her stepdaughter for money, hidden the truth of her father's disappearance, and tried to manipulate every situation for her benefit. Authorities were alerted, and she was held accountable for her crimes. Lina finally saw the darkness removed from her past, replaced by the love and protection she had longed for. With the mansion now filled with laughter, warmth, and family, Adrian dedicated himself to making up for lost time. He encouraged Lina to pursue her dreams, ensuring she never faced hardship alone again. They spent hours talking, sharing memories, and creating new ones, moments that had been stolen from them in the past. The story concluded with a powerful reminder that love, fate, and justice often find a way, even after years of separation and suffering. Lina, once a poor, sold child, now stood proudly as a daughter, cherished and protected. Adrian, the cold CEO, was transformed into a father filled with warmth and devotion. Their reunion was more than just a personal victory, it symbolized the triumph of hope over cruelty, the power of destiny, and the unbreakable bond between a parent and child.